Welcome to the Center for Transformation Institute podcast, where we are uniting therapists everywhere for personal and professional growth. Your journey starts here, at the place therapists grow.
Well, hello. I'm Marlene Allen, Executive Director of Life Model Works, and I'm excited today because we're presenting a new resource to the world. It is called the Life Model Informed Therapist Curriculum. I have several friends waiting to talk to us about the curriculum, but I want to start off with Dr. Jim Wilder. So, Dr. Wilder, thank you for being with us today.
Great to be with you in this very active and delightful group.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. And so, Dr. Wilder, I want you to talk a little bit because over 30 years ago, you guys developed the life model. You were a therapist yourself. And so I just want, today it's kind of like life model has gone beyond just the clinical use. And now we're kind of circling back to our roots. And so I want you to talk a little bit about the early days of the life model and what's the passion? What did you see that let you know this was a winner for use?
Well, there was really quite a lot going on in psychology at the time that we were starting. We were just barely discovering trauma, for example. And what we had was different treatment models for each problem that came along. So if you had a depression, you had one treatment model. If you had low self-esteem, you had another. If you had a family problems with something else. And so there's just an incoherence between all the different treatment models. And we thought, well, everybody is aiming at the same goal, and that is to try to become the kind of fully human person that Jesus designed us to be. And so we wanted a consistent model. And right about that time, a war developed between evangelicals and therapy over sanctification. And in this war, the question was, what's God's part in the process and what's our part in the process? And so we realized that transforming who we were into who God meant it was his side. That was sort of more the salvation process. But maturity was a very human task that he'd given us and generally was being ignored by most therapists at that point. So we needed a model that would handle those kind of questions. And right about that same time, DSM-3 came out and it changed treatment to symptom reduction instead of human thriving. Up until then, we've been trying to help people be more fully alive, and now we just had to go through three, sort of symptom checklists, and that developed into the need for treatment plans. So you had to have some kind of a outline of where you were and where you were going, and you simply couldn't master having so many different plans and come up with coherent treatments very quickly. So we've needed to find something that would match the client's resources to the treatment outcomes because insurance would only pay for certain things, and it wasn't always what the person had come in for. So, basically most people wanted to be better people. And so how do you organize this in a way that makes sense of here's how the problems work, here's how the solutions operate. And on top of that, we're having poor success rates for many disorders. Addiction, for instance, on a very good day was getting 25% success rates. And so we're, again, thinking we have to be more effective and more focused in where we're going. Then you're thinking on the therapist side, they're spending more and more time trying to figure out how to plan treatments, how to get all their paperwork done. And trauma therapy was producing secondary PTSD in the therapists. Clients were having a lot of hospitalizations, but at one point we had about 18 therapists on staff, and every one of them had secondary PTSD from the treatment they were doing. So we're thinking, the way we're going about this is just too much wear and tear on everybody. And about that time, we started noticing that there's harm coming to therapists from their clients. The most obvious was the one that was sharing my office was killed. And the indications are that it was a client that killed him. just because what we were doing was getting people in touch with how unhappy and angry they were, and the risks of the way that we were doing therapy were just way too high. Then as we sort of looking over our results, we noticed that some clients were sustaining their gains and others weren't. And that became sort of the operating question. Why do some people get better and others don't? And the most defining characteristic was that they were gaining something from their community when they had a community that acted sort of like as a replacement family. Something was going on. And it wasn't until we learned the brain relational skills that we were actually able to define what it was that they were getting that helped them sustain their gains. So we built a model around that was aimed at helping clients do what they really wanted to do, which was rejoin community life and participate in meaningful ways of living in a way that made therapists happy for how they were actually participating. It was always difficult work, but it shouldn't have been causing the damage it was. So that was really the passion around creating a better model for recovery.
Thank you. Now I want you to dig back a little bit. And I want you to just tell us one of the stories that you, without any names or anything identifiable, but just some general things that you began to see once the model was in place.
Well, I should tell stories about the therapists, in terms of what kind of changes we saw in therapists. But I remember being at conferences where the therapists were presenting a trauma recovery training and instruction, and between presentations, rushing upstairs to keep therapists, presenters from overdosing. I remember working with people on even on our own staff, and in between meetings, going over to the gun shop next door to make sure that they couldn't buy a gun because they picked out a nice little gun they thought was good for killing themselves. So that kind of change in therapist orientation was very remarkable once we began to build joy and peace and help people find God's presence. Instead of people downloading all of their trauma on the therapist, they were actually able to increasingly share what was going on with Jesus, while the therapist helped them stay in connection with Jesus, stay themselves, and the amount of time it took to recover, I would say for most people, dropped significantly. Therapists' all attitude to borderline clients changed. It was like borderline clients were poison in the death. It was like, therapists love their dissociators. They hate their borderlines. And that was pretty much true. But once we realized borderline people are missing their return to joy skills from all 6 emotions, and we said, okay, well, we'll just teach you how to do that. The wear and tear really turned around. We began to see them change. The dual diagnosis clients, where before we were trying to figure out how to treat trauma and addictions at the same time with contradictory therapies, those people began to recover. Anger management changed from managing anger to teaching people how to really express who they've been created to be. Became identity development. And we found that the husbands of incest abuse survivors, who were considered to be most unhelpful, could usually be turned around in about 3 sessions to being actually helpful to the process, simply by having a model that they could understand and work. So those are some of the sort of the general stories, without telling any specific case stories. But it was a beautiful thing to watch, and it kind of didn't happen overnight because we were still developing the model and debugging it as we went.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you. And Dr. Wilder, what would you say to a therapist today about using the life model in their therapy?
Well, I'd probably say the same thing that most parents say when they discover the life model. I wish I knew this when my kids were little, and now they're learning it. So I would say, you lucky dogs, you get to learn from all of the misery we went through and start off at a higher spot, Um, but the other thing I would say is that many of the people that go to the Thrive training to learn the relational skills are actually very experienced therapists. And the most common reaction they have is, this finally makes sense of everything. It kind of just pulls it together. So I'm not finding myself pulled apart by the various problems. There's just one stream, that I need to help sort of guide everybody into. So the life model helps therapists return to the reason they got into therapy to start with. They wanted to help people be more human, more alive. And you wanted to do this work in a way that helps you become the person that you were supposed to be. And here's a model that kind of packages that all in one place.
Wow. Dr. Wilder, thank you, thank you, thank you. Well, I'm gonna bring in the guest of honor really for the Life Model Informed Therapist, Monica Maurer. She is a licensed clinical mental health counselor, and she's the founder and director of the Center for Family Transformation. She approached Life Model Works. Monica, hi.
Hello. Hello.
You approached us 4 years ago almost, saying that you wanted to take our material and put it into a curriculum that would have continuing education credits available for therapists. And for the last 4 years, this is what you've been running after. And it delights me to have you here with us today. So I'll give you the floor for a minute, but 4 years in the making, what were you thinking? What was the passion behind all of that work?
Oh, thanks, Marlene, and thanks, Dr. Wilder, for those beginning words. I was thinking, oh man, I should be taking notes right now. This is good. Yeah. So what was I thinking? Well, it's been almost 10 years since I came across the life model. Yeah. And I got really passionate very quickly. And I remember in the early years of learning about the model, hearing an older recording of Dr. Wilder saying the people who are really passionate about the model typically are people who have been Christian for a while and have found the Christian life hasn't given them the amount of freedom that they know is possible. And I really identified with that. Like, it was pretty immediate. I got Living from the Heart Jesus Gave You was actually from a Teen Challenge Boys Home director. I was working with the boys, and he gave me the book. I put it on the side table and thought, well, when am I going to get to that? I opened it up, and it was literally like I had, dynamite in my hands. I was like, what is this? Where did it come from? What's going on? It was like the cry of my heart for years and years was to be able to be free myself. And that's why a lot of times as therapists, we go into this profession because we're interested in psychology. We're interested in understanding what it is to be human and why we have the emotions we have. And we want to help ourselves and we want to help other people. And so that was really my story. And I grew up in the church. I married a pastor. We were in ministry. I had, kind of done it all. Therapy techniques, and what the church had to offer in terms of healing experiences. And I had gained some really good things, some good insights and some good healing. But when I came across the life model, it was like nothing else I had ever encountered. And so I just plunged into it. And by that time, I was working with a medium-sized group of therapists, and I was positioned as a trainer of the group. Or at least one of them. And I brought this information to the group, to our executive team. And I said, I don't know, y'all, but I just came across something. And we were having our retreat just in a couple of weeks from then. And I said, I think we need to scrap what we're doing and go after this. And we did. They trusted me, and we did. And the rest is history. I became very passionate, just throwing myself into it's right when Joy Starts Here came out. So I grabbed that book and grabbed whatever else I could find and just was applying it to myself as quickly as I could and giving it to the clients, and they were soaking it up, and the fellow therapists. And I remember contacting Dr. Wilder somewhere in there and saying, hey, I'm thinking I might need to get a PhD to really help with this process, because I want to spend my time, talent, and treasure for the rest of my life, throwing myself into this and seeing what I can do to help, because I believe this is it. This is evangelism. This is the joy movement. This is what God's doing on the earth. Like, it was quickly that I had that. And Dr. Wilder, you got me in touch with Jessica Handy back then. So I had several calls with her over the next year or two. And she said, Monica, I don't know if a PhD is where you want to go right now, because it might take too much time. You know, you have a sense of what the vision here, and that might prolong your process. So I kind of looked into some PhD work to see if that's what, and I really felt the Lord calling me more toward, it was really, you know what it was? It was when COVID happened. And I was like, we don't have time to waste. Like, I've got to figure this out. Like, what can I do? And that's when I started knocking on the Life Model Works executive board door and say, hey, what do you all think? And so I started having some conversations with Michael Sullivan and explaining what I was thinking in terms of continuing education. Is this something that I could help with? Is this a niche that I could help fill for Life Model? The progression of the model to get into the hands of more people. And the board was gracious to receive my proposal, and we started, the talks and had a contract. And after that, it was just plunging into the world of understanding how to do the marketing, and also the scholarly approach to pull this information together to present it to therapists in a way that is palpable for them, in order to, I really do think a passion for me is that I think as therapists, we're silent influencers. That, we aren't maybe on a stage in front of thousands of people usually, or having this broad influence, but the influence that we do have one-on-one with someone is the most powerful influence that oftentimes they have in their life. And if we aren't whole and healed ourselves, then we can't really offer something as valuable. And if we are transformed into the likeness of God, of Christ, and we are sitting with them and offering them information, but not just information, an experience that really is transformational, it has exponential potential for exponential impact. So that's where my passion is.
So good. And so I love everything that you said. So already you've released the first module. Tell us about each one of the planned modules that you have.
Okay. So we are hoping to do an 8-module credentialing program. So the first couple of modules will be a basic training, and then there will be an advanced training. That will be module 3, 4, and 5, and as well as module 6. And then 7 and 8 would be more of a certification track. So right now we have the first 2 modules. So the first module is out and ready for purchase. And we also are adding to it a module 2 that is a standard protocol, for a phase 1 standard protocol for the model. And so that will be the basic training package that therapists can access. We also have an introductory product that is available as well to kind of pull it all together. And so that's what we have right now. The idea behind the first module is the big picture conceptualization, because it is such a huge conceptualization. Like Dr. Wilder was saying, it's not just one aspect of therapy, which oftentimes we'll go get trained with continuing education on one very specialized concept. This is a huge conceptualization. So we did our best to lay out the big picture of the concept. And then the second module and the second portion of the basic training will be, how do you apply this primarily as an entry point? And that's the question a lot of therapists are asking is, okay, I like the concepts, but how do you even get this into the therapy setting?
What I enjoy that you said was the fact that for the therapist, just going through the curriculum, they will get healed themselves, and which is so important first, that we have healthy therapists working with their clients. And if they don't follow anything else in the program, they get to apply it into their own lives for healing in life. Wonderful. Well, thank you. We so appreciate. This is what I love, is that people will just come and take the model and contextualize it for their industry. What does this look like for therapists? And so I thank you for that. I'm expecting to see this happen in other industries as well. And so I want to take the audience a little bit further, because after you wrote the curriculum and submitted to us, of course, we needed somebody just to look at this and review it. And with the bandwidth that's happening around this staff, that wasn't going to be happening anytime soon. So we called on a friend of Life Model Works, Dr. Karen Strubel, a seasoned practitioner of the Life Model, and she's a licensed psychologist. We asked her to review this curriculum. So I'm going to ask Dr. Karen if she will come on screen for us. And I'm going to let you tell us a little bit more about yourself. And you can also include when you were first introduced to the Life Model. Thank you, Dr. Karen.
Yes. Thank you, Marlene. And hi, everyone. I am Karen Strubel. I'm a licensed psychologist in the state of North Carolina. My specialty happens to be play therapy with children and parent coaching and family therapy as well. I trained under Dr. Wilder back in the days before Life Model existed. And I'm here to attest to the 18 therapists who all had post-traumatic stress disorder, because that definitely included me. I was a very young intern in training, and I was completely overwhelmed by the severity of trauma that people were bringing through the doors, and our lack of answers for how to take care of ourselves. In fact, because I started working for Dr. Wilder back in 1988. And if you can imagine the state of self-care for therapists in those days was absolutely abysmal, rock bottom, non-existent. In those days, the profession of psychotherapy had historically been made up primarily of people who were very, very intellectually sharp, not necessarily in tune with the right side of their brains. And there weren't even phrases back then, such as therapist burnout, compassion fatigue, secondary post-traumatic stress. Those phrases did not even exist. And by the time I began my training with Dr. Wilder, I was in my 5th year of what turned out to be a 7-year PhD program, and had trained under many other supervisors previously. I cannot recall a single time when any supervisor had ever asked me how I was doing. And thankfully, Jim Wilder did ask how I was doing. And he could see very quickly that I was drowning in trauma, and that everyone on staff at Shepherd's House was in the same boat. But I was probably the youngest person there. I may have been a little further underwater than a lot of people. Fast forward, because the first book, Living from the Heart Jesus Gave You, did not even come out until 1999. But in 1995, my family and I moved all the way from California to the East Coast. And this was a career move for my husband. And we had 2 very, very small children, and ages 3 and less than 1 at the time. So we moved to the East Coast. I decided to stop working for a season and take time to help grow the brains of my little ones at home. And the Life Model was just beginning. At the time I left Shepherd's House, it was nothing more than a phrase on a blank notepad, where Jim had come into a staff meeting one day and said, you know, what we're doing is not working. I just think that we need to turn the coin to the other side and start talking about what helps people be more alive. And he said, I think I want to develop something, and I think I want to call it the life model. Well, at that point, I moved away and was gone for several years. However, Jim kept sending me, this is to give you an idea of how long ago it was, he would send me in the mail cassette tapes of Dr. Alan Shore and his talks at UCLA on the brain. And, you know, we were just moving into the decade of the brain. And so I was sort of keeping up with what was happening at Shepherd's House, but the real litmus test that let me know life model was going to turn into something was the next time I saw Jim and his team. He had mostly a whole new team, and they came to North Carolina, especially the Corsies, Chris and Jen, and presented a Thrive training at Montreat, North Carolina, where my husband Dan and I were working at a Christian college called Montreat College. And what I noticed right off the bat was the level of joy. I might not have even known to call it that at the time, but the level of joy amongst the entire team who was part of this Thrive training was unlike anything I had ever seen connected with Shepherd's House or Dr. Wilder. I loved working for Dr. Wilder. In fact, so much so that even though I originally signed up for 1 year of training with him, I ended up training with him for 5 years because I found him to be, and still find him to be, the wisest person I have ever met, and quite possibly the most godly. So I considered it a tremendous privilege to work for him and to learn everything I could. But what I will say is during those first 5 years, from 1988 to 93, Jim was all of those wonderful things, but he was not a joyful person. He too was drowning in pain and suffering well, but also in tremendous amount of pain. And so, and then I go a long time without seeing him. And all of a sudden he shows up in North Carolina and he's smiling and he's laughing. And the people who've come out there with him are also smiling and laughing. And I'm immediately drawn to find out what has changed. And ever since, I have been a follower of the life model, and I have thoroughly enjoyed attending all 3 Thrive trainings, or 3 tracks plus the new bonus track. And my husband and I have attended and reading all the books, and I've just been playing catch up ever since. And I love it. I incorporate life model principles into my work daily with children and their parents and families. And we talk a lot about the importance of sending the message to your child that you can delight in them and that you do delight in them despite their dysfunctional behaviors and all the things that drive you crazy as a parent. That the bottom line is we must delight in our children. Not every moment, perhaps, but we must provide that foundation that they can come back to over and over again, of knowing just that they are the apple of our eyes. And that I find to be the secret of parent-child therapy that goes well.
Wow. Thank you, Dr. Karen. And just listening to your story, it affirms that we made the right choice when we needed someone to review this curriculum who knew the life model, had been living it for a while. And so thank you so much for taking the time to go through this first module for Monica and her team. And I'm going to just give you the floor for a second and tell us what are your thoughts concerning this life model informed curriculum.
Okay. Yes, gladly. My thoughts are wow, period, just, period, wow, period. Monica, my hat is off to you completely. You have managed to pull together every single one of the life model resources that are out there. I haven't found one that's been overlooked. You've pulled them all together. You and your partner Kyle, your professional partner Kyle, have pulled them together and synthesized the material in a way that is user friendly, very engaging, very accessible for therapists. And I cannot even explain how excited I am to see this curriculum take off.
Thank you so much, Karen. That means so much. Just your encouragement around that. And it's amazing just to, hear you say that, but also just to connect with you. I mean, it's such a great connection for me because, your name preceded you, but now I'm actually getting to know you in this way of us kind of collaborating on you giving us insights and understanding, and just to hear your story just now that you've been tracking with the model before it was a thing. So for you to say that, it's a very big deal, and so I'm honored to hear that. Thank you so much.
Well, you're very welcome, Monica. The life model truly has restored my joy, which is what has made it possible for me now in my 60s to still be doing therapy, even with high energy little kids who are way out of control.
Such a good point, right? For us as therapists, being able to return to joy and not just hold in all that we're carrying with our clients gives us more capacity to continue to do the work.
Yes.
It's beautiful.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Karen, for doing that review for us. And now I have one more friend we want to invite to the platform, and this is Chris Coursey. Chris Coursey is president of Thrive Today, and he is a longtime practitioner and a trainer. You've already heard him in the history of, you've heard his name in the history of the life model. And so, Chris, I just want to welcome you and tell us about your involvement in this life model informed therapist curriculum, as well as go ahead and tell us about what you do with Thrive Today.
Yes, well, I'm definitely a direct beneficiary of the life model I came across living from the heart Jesus gave you in the 90s when I was doing an internship with another Christian ministry that specialized in working with severe trauma. And I can remember reading this, it was a manuscript. And once I picked it up, I couldn't put it down. It explained so much about my life. It explained a lot about my church, my family, my community, and those that I was serving. It was, learning to serve a population with a lot of type A and type B trauma that the life model talks about. And little did I know I'd have the chance to work with Dr. Wilder just a few years later. And Jim really wanted to create some training to help flesh out some of the life model principles, particularly the relational skills. So Jim had this idea for a bit of an experiment where we would run this training. And really it was, a week of exercises and training and practices to help people learn relational skills. And the training, it exceeded our expectations. We learned so much with that first year of training in the early 2000s. And here we are, all these years later, my wife and I have the privilege of running Thrive Today and really running those Thrive trainings. And what an absolute joy it is. Our lives have just been changed by this. And I really started out working with, people who had some hard stuff happening in their lives, and they were just looking for support, looking for help. And as Jim mentioned, a lot of the people coming to Thrive are counselors and therapists. They're highly motivated. Many of them, their tanks are pretty low, and they've been working in the garden for a long time, and they're just desperate and eager for solutions and for support and for skills. And so I'm very excited about what Monica is doing here, because we've had this need for all these therapists and counselors who are just highly motivated for resources and really desperate to learn and apply the life model. And, we've learned a lot over the years about people living and applying the life model. And it's just an absolute joy to see how people can come alive in new way, both the therapists as well as the precious ones that they're serving. And so I would say by far that's one of my favorite things in the world, is just watching what happens as people begin to blossom and thrive. And to see what Monica has done here is just very exciting, because she's taken this this bull by the horns, and Monica's just run with it here. And I've been sharing this good news with all my therapists and counselor friends, that here it is, at last, we have a resource for people to really use the life model with the specific focus and resources that Monica's creating here.
And I understand there were a lot of phone calls, maybe, and emails between the two of you as she was processing.
Yes. So I had the pleasure really of, knowing Monica pre-Thrive, and then having the joy of watching Monica go through the training tracks of Thrive, and just seeing her, her energy and her heart to not only live the life model and, with her family, but also be able to apply it with those that she serves. And so one thing I noticed quickly about Monica is she has vision, and she had an idea here. She saw something that she knew could be a blessing for a lot of people. And you know what? Monica has just persevered. She did the work getting through the Thrive tracks, and she's done the work with this vision of being able to create this wonderful resource for therapists and counselors. And what a joy it's been just to be a source of encouragement for her along the way. I'm very proud of her.
Yeah, you really have been an encouragement to me, Chris,
Aww.
because you were probably the main contact I had. So I would call you on the phone and say, Chris, help me with this. I'm thinking about this. What do you think? Who should I talk to? And just always so gracious and helpful. And we've even worked together with some client situations, and that's been really helpful as well. So I've really felt your support through the years in terms of all of that, and really admire you and what you're doing as well. So thank you so much for saying all of that.
Oh, well, it's an absolute joy, Monica. And I've got your back, and just looking forward to these wonderful resources and spreading this with people who really need it, because you get this into the hands of therapists and counselors, and it's just going to spread. And that's the part that really excites me about all of this, is just seeing the good stuff spread. And I believe that there's going to be a lot of good things growing in the garden with this new resource.
I can't help but jump in here a moment and say that, these Chris and Monica sort of represent two ends of the spectrum. And one of the things that we did intentionally with Chris and the Thrive training was keep it from being clinical, so that these skills could be built in community. And at the same time, we realized that a clinical approach needed to be developed to take this back, so that what was being done in the therapy office was being enhanced by what was supported in the community. Here's community that's helping people have sustainable recovery. And so between the two of them, they have really packaged this very well. Here's how the community can become a sustainable resource. And we notice that from reports we've had, that therapists who have a community they can refer to that's going to be building these skills have a much better time helping their clients recover. And communities who have therapists who they can refer to help with the clinical aspects, the diagnostic side of the recovery, are able to correct the problems. And so really, it's a marvelous blend that is developed between Chris and Monica that shouldn't be overlooked. And I would love to see in the environment of every community, that there's community building skills and there's clinicians that can help untangle the tough problems.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
Monica, I'm going to let you close us out with your comments, but I want you to answer this question. Who would benefit from following the Life Model Informed Therapist curriculum?
So that's a great question, Marlene. We purposefully made our primary audience those therapists, anyone, whether you're licensed as a psychologist, psychiatrist, or even as a master's level clinician, and also pastoral counselors and coaches, I think, can benefit as well. We did go ahead and go through the continuing education approval process. So we are approved with the national board so that everyone can receive continuing education credits no matter where they are. But there's definitely anyone who's interested, really. And so I think module 1 really gives this big picture conceptualization. And I love what Dr. Wilder was just saying about how the Thrive 19 relational brain skills brings something to the community that we're also trying to bring to therapists. And so what it's really been helpful for me to have attended Thrive and be in connection with Chris and to be poring over Transforming Fellowship again and again and again as I lead people through it, in order to see how it fits into how all those concepts fit and are interwoven. We're going to have 4 standard protocols: phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and phase 4. And the different brain relational skills fit at different places in terms of how to address clients at different times. And so our hope is to really give anyone who's in the helping profession a track to run on for themselves personally, but then also to how to take it to the clients quickly. In fact, we're doing a research project right now on the first standard protocol. My husband's getting his dissertation, or he's getting his PhD in clinical psychology at Liberty. And our team of 8 therapists at the Center for Family Transformation has been trained in the standard protocol. We're applying it with clients right now in North Carolina, a 6-session standard protocol to evidence-based life model informed therapy, which is super exciting. It's a groundbreaking kind of experience. We're so excited to be a part of that, but just seeing how those relational brain skills can be applied one-on-one in these sessions. In fact, I will give you a little sneak peek. One of our therapists, Alex, he said yesterday that he had a client say she couldn't think of one thing she appreciated at the first session. And now 4 sessions in, she had 40 things that she appreciated, and that she's already starting to live in joy and learn that joy is her normal state of being. And so I know it works. You all know it works. We don't need the research to prove that. Yet, I think it's going to be really helpful for the therapists in the world to say, hey, this is something that's worth paying attention to.
Wow. So good. Well, we are excited, and we say congratulations to you on all this hard work and to see this finally launched. I want to thank all of our panelists today. They've all had a part in this, and thank you so very much for being with us today. And so, Monica, as we close, how does someone sign up for the curriculum? We're going to put that on the screen, so tell us what we're looking for.
Okay. And I'll say as well, thank you all for just the opportunity. I've just experienced you all as just generous in terms of an ability to give people like me an opportunity to use our gifts and see things come into fullness. So the way that anyone would get a hold of this is we have a website, cftinstitute.com. And so all the modules are through the learning platform Thinkific. And so on our website, that's very easy to access. So people can get a hold of it right there. We have a very large LinkedIn following. So if you're on LinkedIn, you can find me, Monica Maurer, Mouer. on LinkedIn, and we can get connected there. We have a podcast on Apple Podcast and Spotify called Therapists Growing Therapists. And so, or it's actually called The Place Therapists Grow. We have a special section of it, Therapists Growing Therapists, where I'm interviewing therapists from all around the world who love the life model and have already been using it in their practice. And so, yes, The Place Therapists Grow, anyone can access that. And then we're on Instagram and Facebook as well. But our website is the main place, and we'd love to connect. We are going to be at AACC in the fall of 2025. So if anyone listening is going to be there, come by our booth and say hello. We're hoping to do a workshop. Jessica Sanderson and I are putting in our proposals for a workshop tonight, so we can pray that goes through, and that's how they can get a hold of us. Thanks for asking, Marlene.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And we want to just thank all the viewers who are watching our recording today. And Lord bless you all.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of The Place Therapists Grow. We hope you will join us again next week. To expand your knowledge and continue your growth journey, go to cftinstitute.com and take our introductory course to find out how the life model can enhance your life and your clients' lives too. We look forward to continuing to learn and grow with you. See you next time.